On today's video, we're going to start on a carbon fiber repair of Vlad's BUELL, which has more than several areas to repair, broken tabs, holes, cracks. We're going to try to show it all on this video and maybe pass on good info. On this video, we're going to do some carbon fiber repair of Vlad's BUELL, the bodywork on his BUELL. He brought it over yesterday. It has a bunch of cracks and there's actually a piece missing. I'm going to have to show how to make a piece when there's a piece missing, especially a piece with a curve in it. We'll try to show that. I don't know if this video is going to go over 1 day, 2 days, because my time, I only get chunks of time. Now I'm in the middle of the summer. Normally I do this kind of work in the winter. We're doing this as a special favor to Vlad so he can get this bike put together. He's very excited about it. But I want to show the technique that I've used. I've used it on basically on almost all of these bikes. It has worked well for me, but it's not the only way you can do it. So if you search online on my channel, you put my name in quotation marks and then put carbon fiber repair, you'll see videos of basically every one of these motorcycles will come up. But I want to get down and get started on this as soon as possible. This is a lot more work than I originally thought it would be. When I looked at it real careful, I realized this is going to be a bigger job than I thought it would. Now, especially on the FZR restoration, we did so much carbon fiber work, so much repair work. That was a true labor of love. All of that is out on the video on the FZR fairing repair. For this bike, I have 2 sets of body work. One set is, I have never even done it yet because it needs so much body work. But we're going to show a way that I've been able to repair things relatively easily. It's not high tech. It's just a little bit dirty from time to time, but it works pretty well for me. Now these are the parts we're going to be repairing today, and normally we have a clean workbench to work off, but we do have some lingering projects going on here. And the whole thing is going to revolve around fixing this. Now this is plastic, it's not fiberglass, so I'm going to very carefully pick the materials I use. You can see this one is ready to break off, and it's what Vlad did, and that's why I made a separate video. It went on forever with him picking spots that he wanted to have fixed. And it looks like he took a shotgun and made it, but we're going to fix them all. And, well, nobody's going to do it for me. I got to get started. So I always have a philosophy of starting with the easiest part first, the smallest part. And just to get my rhythm going as for doing this, each one of these holes I'm going to reinforce, maybe even reinforce by the mirror. I see it's cracking in there. And the whole issue is, and I put this on the video from yesterday, we try to post a video every day. This is almost, I would think, way too thin, but again, I'm not a motorcycle designer, but the proof is that it cracked. So I guess you don't have to be a designer to figure that out. And I know that because I did injection molding when I was a partner in a machine shop for 25 years, what I know is these parts, the material they use is subject to various compositions. Some of them get brittle with age, some of them are very high tech and good quality. It looks like this is something that really should not have broken in the first place. Now the material we're going to use on the bulk of this job is JB Weld Clear Weld. You can buy this. 2 tubes of this are about $20 in Lowe's. It's supposed to set in 5 minutes at 70 degrees. Our shop is a little cooler, and so this might take 15 minutes to dry and to harden up. We're going to find out right away. And we have, this is sticky back paper, Rhino wet, and a soft sanding block that attaches very conveniently, because the parts that we're going to be doing not even have to be clean, they have to be etched, sanded, a rough surface for the epoxy to get a good grip. Otherwise you're just wasting your time. So again, I always like to start with the easy stuff first. This is pretty cut and dry. Anything that we're going to repair on the inside, I want to protect the outside finish. Now this is not painted. They put the dye in the plastic, but what I don't want to happen, and the reason I'm not using CA, if I were to do this with CA, and you can see all of these little things have little spider cracks in them, what would happen with the CA? It would work its way out here and damage the finish. Now that's no problem if we were going to paint this today, but I think what Vlad wants to do is ride through the summer, make sure this doesn't crack again before he puts on his high-tech paint job that I know he wants to do. He showed it yesterday on his phone, and I know he's excited about it. So step one is to, before you do anything, cover up all of the holes from the outside. And if you're going to repaint the whole part, in which case if this were the middle of the winter and we were going to just do the new custom paint job, I wouldn't have to do this. I just sand it off when it's anything that got out. But the CA repair would have been a little better, but then you run that risk if some gets on the finish. It's not impossible to get off, but it is difficult. Now this part here, I'm sure you can see, is totally cracked. This is one thing we're really going to have to be careful of here. And I want to get, boy oh boy, this, you can't imagine how thin this is. Wow. I want to get that done. I don't want any of this epoxy sneaking its way out on the other side. Now, I don't know if other people have posted similar videos on YouTube. Yeah, I don't know. And if there's anybody out there that has, even better, thank you for sharing. But this is, I'm only trying to show the way I've used over many, many years. I've been doing this a lot of years, both modeling and motorcycling, and working with these materials. And it's something that I enjoy the result when I see a bike that's been brought back from, well, like this part anyway. Anyway, we're not going to belabor it any longer. Any place on this that could crack, I'm fixing it before it cracks even worse. Now, the reason is because one of two things. If come winter time, we're going to want to put maybe 200 hours into the finish of this bike, I don't want to have it crack then. So this is really like, well, we're going to see how it plays out. But anyway, first thing is to block off all the holes so none of our epoxy can get out onto the other side. Now, Vlad has cleaned these parts with Simple Green, and I've put the greasing agent on it, but you can see what stress these bolts are under. And so what we're going to try to do is reinforce this whole area, of course. And the first thing, of course, if this were not clean, is get it degreased, and then we want to sand it and etch it, and then make up our carbon fiber little plugs and parts. And I think what I'll do is I'll show one of them in real time, just to show how to do one. And then we'll get, well, 1, 2, 3, there's probably 10 or 15 there. Okay, so this is 100 grit paper, but it's not critical. But you can see we really have, all of these things are really under stress. So just the area around it, the size of a couple of postage stamps, just to get it rough. This is kind of simple. When it's all done, I'll wipe it with M600, make sure there's no dust on it. This will also serve to flatten it out so we don't have a problem with the material going up around a corner unnecessarily. And once you understand what any epoxy, and we're using a good grade of epoxy, Brodak epoxy is an excellent epoxy. But even if we were using CA, having this surface etched, it's got to be clean and it's got to be etched. Those are two super critical things. Now, as long as I have the sanding block out, I may as well sand all these areas. And I'm trying not to let the video get too long. In fact, maybe I'll break it into several parts. But I don't want to leave out any steps. Now, I know I hear people all the time, they're leaving comments, oh, the intro's too long, the ending's too long, I'm too long, you know. But I try not to leave out steps because I know the reality is not a lot of this kind of information is posted on YouTube for people that really want to do it. And a set of these parts is $1,000. So for a person who doesn't just have a quick $1,000 to be able to fix it for probably a couple of hundred in material and labor, it's a whole different ball game. For people new to carbon fiber repair, carbon fiber comes a lot of ways. There's tow, we have plenty of tow, but I always keep the scraps from every job I do because right now I'm looking for some nice weave, and if you don't have any scraps, I want weave, not twill. Weave would be a better choice right now, but sometimes I don't have a choice. They're both good, but the weave, where it's exactly 90 degrees for this kind of repair, is the best. I found it the best anyway. But I can go through my box of scraps here. That's no problem to find it. Actually, the half Kevlar and half carbon would be a good choice. It's not critical. And if you didn't have this E-glass, it'd be fine too. You can buy a yard of this off the internet, 4 ounce or 6 ounce, probably $25, $30, probably maybe more now. Who knows with the way things are going. But anyway, we need to start with some carbon material and make what amounts to be little postage size, a little bit bigger than a postage stamp, pieces of material to put onto the repair. All right, so I cut a piece, And it's going to cover, we're going to just do this one in real time. And then to keep the video from getting too long, it'll be pretty redundant. This is just so I know where I want to put the epoxy. You're not going to see this anyway, so I know I want to mix the epoxy in there. This is a really good quality epoxy. And again, any of the ones that are made for model airplanes, especially the Brodak one, is real good too. But you don't want to use, I mean, the ShopRite brand or something. This is a good quality. Now I mix it right on the part because I don't want to waste any. First of all, if you mix it in a little tub or a little tray, you tend to waste it, and this stuff does get expensive. After a while, you look around and you've spent a lot on material that you don't have to spend. To get this done right and get this reinforced, this will be just fine. Now I try to keep it from getting on everything here. Let me just make sure, because at the end of every time I do one little piece, I'll clean my hands. It's hard to do this with rubber gloves. Sometimes it's mandatory, but now I've got a layer of epoxy on there. The Sharpie marker just tells me where I can put, how far out it has to go. Now for right now, this part of the job, I just want this to bond. I want to make sure I get a good bond down in that recess. Let's see how that plays out. Now keep in mind with epoxy, heat is going to make it cure faster, and cool, which we have in the shop right now, it's going to take a little longer to dry. But right now we have no choice. It's hot outside, but it's definitely cool down here in the shop. So I'm going to just let that cure out. If I want to speed it up, I can hit it with a hairdryer. That'll speed it up just a little bit. And I can take any of the overage that's on there just for now. Even though you don't see this part, I just like to keep it reasonably nice. Anyway. Alright, we'll have a cup of coffee while that's drying. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up. We'll do this in sections. Four we're going to do all at the same time. I'll try to mix the epoxy and do 4 at the same time. Little patches like that. Let that dry. See, what I'm trying to do is piece by piece by piece, very methodically. And then up here we have cracks to deal with, among other things. So it's one step at a time. This is going to be a long journey, but we'll do it one step at a time. Now from this point on, these little patches get kind of redundant, but we'll get them all done. And there's just the thing with it, there's a lot of little steps to this, and it's just going to take time. It's like any of these other finishing things, it runs into a lot of time, and I always say you've just got to tough it out. Now in this case we'll try to do 4 at once. That'll make it just a little bit quicker, but again, I don't want to skimp on getting it done right. I want it right up to the edge. Usually 1-to-1 epoxy is not ultra critical about mixing it, but it's better if you keep it 1-to-1, because what happens at the end, you don't run out with 1 tube of epoxy that's got half of the amount in it. So we will just try to do this as accurately as possible, and it's just going to be time consuming. And so I know some people are going to be bored at some point in time. Well, I'm sorry that these things just take so long. Like a lot of finishing things, they just go on and on and on, but it's time. And when you think of $1,000 for new bodywork, and then a new $1,000 bodywork, by the way, you have to paint it. That's another, well, you got to consider that. Now putting these patches in, when we're done with these parts, this will absolutely be better than, in every way, than if you just bought brand new bodywork. Because if you bought brand new bodywork, especially if you bought this bodywork, it'll crack. What do you think, the other one is not going to crack? Next time I see a BUELL on the road, and I don't see a lot of them, so I don't know what that really means though. Let's see, this one we want to put up here. I want to cut this in half. I want to just, even though you're not going to see this really, I don't want to make it that it doesn't look workmanlike. This one here can go down here. And any of the ones we fixed for Mark Morgan or for Glenn. Glenn had an accident with his Ducati, crashed it, and we did the body work on it more than once. And I showed him how to do it, and he got better at doing it than me. He was really a good a good repairman. So if you need some body work for a Ducati, just call Glenn. Glenn, sorry about that, but now we shared the information with him, and because he's just as enthusiastic about this as I am, he picked it up very, very quickly. Now I'm only gonna show this. I don't want to show this over and over again, but the point I'm making is it's try to work neat and try not to get rushed on it. Once you start rushing, it gets to be a problem really quick. Now, another little trick I wanted to show, once I pat these down, I have this here. What it is a jar of acetone. And don't leave the lid off. Breathing acetone in is not your best friend. A little bit on a Q-tip, and anywhere I don't want this to be, this will always, by the way, good tip, have a box of Q-tips handy. Add it into the cost of doing business. Okay, so once that's done, then I want to just make the edge not so rough, if I can get it. This doesn't even matter, but because when we paint this, we'll sand this and smooth it out a bit. But for right now, I know what Vlad wants to do. He wants to make sure that he rides the bike all summer and that this does not crack again. So now we're ready for letting that just cure out, and we'll move on to that side. Now, another good tip, if you mix an epoxy, or if you buy an epoxy at Lowe's, I buy this stuff at Lowe's, and you think you need 2 tubes, buy 3, because the carbon fiber absorbs it like a sponge, and you wind up at the end of the job, you still need some more epoxy, and you got to make an extra trip to Lowe's. So I've learned over the years, buy more than you think you need. So now we're going to try to cut a piece big enough to go around here, and up around the lip a little, because I see it's cracked right there, and make 1 piece for that, 1 piece for that, and I think we're going to need 4 pieces all together. So I'm going to, again, to keep the video from getting too long, basically make a pattern, make 4 pieces, maybe do 2 at a time, because the epoxy starts to kick off. You really can't rush it. And nothing changes. The parts have to be roughed up, clean. I made the patches already. And I mix the epoxy. It's pretty redundant, and the only thing I can really emphasize to people, a lot of people that have been to my shop, and I've done this while they're waiting, they're amazed at how long it takes to do this stuff. Well, yeah, it does. I wish I could say, yeah, you could do this in 15 minutes or something, but unfortunately, my dentist has a good saying. He says, good dental work takes time. And I don't know if he's right, but I still have some of my teeth anyway. Now, of course, when we're done with this, we've got to re-drill all the holes and all these little square slots that everything hooks into. And I've got to try to adjust the thickness of those slots so that the bodywork has a nice fit and finish, or as good as we can make it. But I'm wondering, as I'm doing this job, I'm just wondering, was it a mistake that they made it this thin, or did a lot of other people have this problem? I don't know. I don't know. And it's sad, because I know Eric Buell was a brilliant guy, and he really was enthusiastic and passionate, but sometimes I guess you just, well, I don't know. Okay, so I'm leaving this patch oversized over all the cracked areas in one shot. We're going to try to get this in one shot. See if it's our lucky day to get that down in there. In fact, these we're only going to be able to do one at a time. I got to do each one and let it dry before I move on to the next one. Again, that's where this whole thing becomes time consuming. But when you keep thinking about that $1,000, it's just it kind of gives you perspective on it. So we have basically all of this done. And the last 2, I'll do these off camera because this is redundant. I've got to cut pieces to fit in here, piece up there. Going to be very similar to that. And then I'll hopefully have this 1 piece done, and I can put it aside to dry. I think that's going to be, wow. That when this dries up and I get this cleaned up, this will be the equivalent of having a new part that basically is not going to break when you start the engine of the bike. So even though this is 5-minute epoxy, it dries semi-hard. It really takes 24 hours before I would even attempt to drill those holes or clean any of this up. So the next part of this, of course, is to put this aside to dry for 24 hours. Anytime I'm doing this kind of work, I know patience, patience, and more patience. Anytime I've tried to rush through this or take some kind of giant shortcut, in the end it bites you. Patience is king. So the way this stay played out, this took more than half of my work session, but I'm going to try to finish up. I'm going to take a little extended work session, get this part done off camera, and then that'll be, I think, about 1/3 of the job, so we'll be able to turn this into 3 videos so that we don't have anybody complaining the videos go too long. And it's just, in this case, you've got to do every little crack, every little thing, and it just takes time. CA would make the job go a little faster, but I'm still afraid I would ruin the finish on this. And so far, I guess it's going to be fine. But I'm going to do that other part off camera, then we'll come back to this. So this day ended. The 2 smaller parts, we have all the epoxy drying. It's going to have to dry overnight. Tomorrow we'll get started on maybe one or both of those other pieces. They need a lot of work. And the hardest part of this whole job is going to be, there's a piece missing on one of these, and I don't know where. It's down there. It's up in the front. There it is over there. That piece is missing. I'm going to show how I would recreate it and make it. And it's not going to be perfect from the outside. It'll be looking like a touch-up paint from the outside, but inside it won't break any worse. So for a day of carbon fiber work, this turned out to be pretty good. I'm happy to send the picture to Vlad and show him the progress on the job. Now at the end of every work session, I try to look around and just see what I've accomplished and try to plan out the next day and come up with the best and most efficient way to do it. But in this case, this is just a dive that absorbs a lot of time. So the day played out pretty well, and I was very happy to get that much done in one work session. But as I said many times, you start taking shortcuts on this kind of work, and at the end, it implodes on you. I think this is going to be perfect. I think it's going to suit Vlad's needs to a T, and it may be some good information you can pick up off of this if you have something similar to repair. There's no rocket science here. A lot of it's common sense, and a lot of it, I think, seriously, you can just pick off by watching the video. Now we try to post something up every day, and thanks so much, guys, for watching.